already? No.
No, well,
do I need to look at you?
You can look at me. You can look down if you need to. I will be most likely looking at you and looking there to focus. So I wanted to ask you at first, because I'm really curious, how do you feel about teaching art students programming, coding? Because I feel like it can come with a lot of pressure because people are getting confused a lot.
Yeah.
Why do you like doing this?
I go back to a similar conversation we had a couple of years back with Ted Davis from Basel. I'm really interested in what we would call a gateway drug into coding. And how can you start a workshop at Ground Zero with people who've never coded before, and to try and remove some of the stigmas around it, but just get people to play and have fun and experience what is possible using a couple of lines of code. I really like just this simple idea of drawing simple shapes, and then can we code a face, as we know in the workshop, something really simple. And then like they can never quite do it. The triangle doesn't look quite right. The nose has gone off over here. You know, it's suddenly a Picasso cubist thing, and you're like,
face is upside down.
How'd you get this eye that is, you know, I looked at someone yesterday and they were like, it doesn't look like a face, but it was just rotated, and they were having problems. So just think like really simple things that we do every day in Adobe software or whatever people are using. It's interesting just to take back from that position. Can people afford access to some of these things? And what happens when you can create almost your own visual language or way of doing things?
Do I understand
lines of code?
Do I understand that it's about looking into the origin simplicity of what we use on a daily basis, like complex programs like Photoshop, etc.? Do you mean it in that way?
Yeah, I think, but I just like the idea of going back to basics. And you know, we talk a lot about AI in the workshops. There's a lot of AI, machine learning. People are like, oh, I don't like this, but actually these are tasks that are in Photoshop and software. But I also like it as then a starting point for the next set of questions might be. You know, what environments can this go into? What about screen-based or physical-based media? What's the interaction when you can network an image? So you can network an image from one machine to another machine, or you can, you know, go much wider than that and network it online or offline or wherever you can go. And so you start off with this very simple, almost, you know, Bauhausian approach of circle, triangle, square. And, you know, that's got its history and its legacies, but then what people do with that next gets quite interesting for me. But also realize it's really humbling at the same time. But I just like the fact that you can download a piece of free open source software. Doesn't cost any money. You can donate if you wish to. You know, I bought punk records when I was a kid, and it says pay no more than $1.99. And you know, now those things are worth lots of money. But I like this fact that, no, it's a really low entry.
It is a nice way to word it, like taking it back to basics. And I want to ask, because after working with you for quite a few times, quite a long time, in a way, you landed in design field and kind of into coding, programming fields. How do you feel, and what is the connection for you between such, in my opinion, far apart fields?
Yeah, I mean, fields are something I've just tried to escape, but it's took me a long time to think about what area I'm in. And recently just had the confidence to say I'm interdisciplinary, and I think in lots of different ways and use whatever medium may be at hand. So I thought this is quite interesting. In my career, I started off I did a foundation course, which was really the best experience for me. It's a 1-year course. And I did like painting, printmaking, sculpture, design. And I was like, I felt like I could do design, but I had all these questions in using media and other forms. So I was like, whoa, what can I do? I had like a Scottish sculptor who was teaching me, like, we call them jiffy bags, like mail bags. He just had a load of them. He's like, what can we do with these? And it threw me off, you know. And I was like, whoa, it was that inquisitive nature. And I was like, okay, let's just go. What is sculpture? And then I left that foundation course, and I always thought it was play before I got to graphic design, and then I would like knuckle down. But then I got to graphic design, didn't have quite the experience I was looking for, and just really wanting to get into fine art at the moment. And I think it was the freedom around that at the time was quite interesting. So I then went and studied a BA in fine art, and again, I had this similar journey. You could do 3 things: painting, printmaking, or sculpture. And I was like, well, I could already paint. So I went, I'm going to do printmaking and sculpture just to get us, looking back now, I'm actually talking about this, I can recognize it was just that interest in areas that I didn't know, and maybe that inquisitiveness. So I was like, whoa, over here I can do this. So I did sculpture, and then I did printmaking. And then at the end, you had to make a choice. And I said, well, I'm going into painting. And everyone was like, but you haven't done painting, you did printmaking and sculpture. Like, yeah, but I'm informed by that. Now I want to go back. But what happened at the time then is I wasn't friendly with the painting tutors and felt like I was rejected because I wasn't part of that. But luckily I had a great connection. My tutor ended up being somebody called Pisarchik, who is now, I think, he's head of protest art at the Royal College and the RCA. And he came across and he was like, let's make some work about what you're pissed off about. In this really simple way. And we're actually like, whoa, where's this? And like, what problems do you face day to day? And actually I can map that back to the workshop that we're doing today in a way. So, and I really liked how he just came in. He talked to me about football, and then he'd switch, and it was just this very fluid conversation. He was an Arsenal fan, and then he would talk about politics, but it was I get this idea that art and design was reflecting life in the everyday, which I thought was important. We'd have great conversations about Francis Bacon and accident, and the idea of accident in work. But also, and then what happened to me is I took a train. So I was in Farnham in Surrey, it's now called UCA. I took a train up to London, and I got the paper, so I bought a Guardian newspaper. The Berlin Wall had fell. I don't know what year this is, my history might be bad. I look on the back of the paper, and Peter has a photo montage on there, this big, in a broadsheet. And I was like, holy shit, this looks like my tutor's work. And I was like, this is amazing. And, and then he actually left. I think he had a difficult position at the school, and he left, and I didn't see him. And then a couple of years later, I seen him in a gallery. I went to a Francis Bacon exhibition, and he was carrying a bag, like a shop. I think it was like a Quick Save bag or a Tesco bag. So it was like a supermarket bag, plastic bag. And I was like, hey, Peter. And he was like, oh, how are you doing? What are you doing here? And it's like, oh, I'm just looking at the work. And he's like, yeah. We're having a conversation. I was like, what are you doing? He's like, oh, I'm going to sell my artwork to the V&A. And I was like, okay. I was like, yeah, this is fantastic. And it was like, but he was carrying it in a plastic bag, with like holes in it. Yeah. And I was like, this is just fantastic. So I just got really interested in that.
This is how this works.
So I went fine art, and then I retrained for design a little bit later. I think there's another.
Very interesting. Very interesting.
Someone's knocking. Might have to just edit that out. Yeah, so if I pick up from this, so I did fine art, and then I left, and then I started screen printing. And from screen printing, I had a job the very next day, so I finished my BA, I went and screen printed. And this little studio had a computer in the room, and it sounds bizarre nowadays, but I would print upstairs, and the guy ran a skateboard shop. So I used to go skateboarding, and I would work 2 days selling skateboard, and then the next day I'd be screen printing. As a kid, 21, 22, it was just the best job for me ever. But actually what it did is give me access to technology, because there was a computer in the corner. So one point we were like, we want to make this t-shirt, and the shop at the time was called the Flea Pit. And we were like, can I make the text do this? Very simple in Photoshop. I spent 48 hours. How do I get text on a curve? I've never used text before. And I was just like, whoa, I could get access to this box that I could never get access to at university. And it was a friend And I would ask him little bits, and he'd say, oh, you do this. So I just got a little bit of gap. But I could just turn on that machine anytime and just go. And then I go back screen printing, and I could go, oh, I'm going to do this. And little things just began to click within that. And I went from that stage. Then the shop got into a bit of financial trouble, and we were like, okay, we're going to run it down. So I seen an advert in the newspaper to sign up for a multimedia course. And you needed a degree in a previous subject. And I was like, whoa, can I get on this course? I was unemployed at the time, technically unemployed. And I was like, can I go to this course? And I went, and the first class was like coding, 3D, really, I think it was called Lightwave at the time, really simple 3D package.
How did it feel from what you were doing?
Yeah, just amazing. I was like the guy first in, and I was last out. And because I was around, and it just comes back to being interdisciplinary again. I remember speaking to this guy in the first time, like, oh, what degree did you do? And he's like, I'm a shoemaker. I was like, holy shit. And the next person was like, I studied architecture. And actually what happened was all these people were coming around thinking about what, we used Directed at the time, very simple macromedia package, but you could ask quite difficult questions. So you could program to a CD-ROM. I learned HTML from scratch. I learned what was called lingo to coding. And I was never natural at it, but I just wanted to get better. So I would be like the last guy to leave, other than if I had to go and screen print some stuff or get back to the skate shop. So I was in this just amazing, like felt like a mixed reality of this being on the machine, like work, and this other thing. So and yet through the skateboard shops and amazing communities of people come from all sorts of different perspectives, and in the shop, like people would be like, people would come in. There was a guy there that was interested in computer game stuff, so he was signed up for like a digital computer arts games course. And then through the guy who ran the shop, he left to go and teaching. And then he said, oh, those skills that you got in HTML, can you build a web page for some students from Sweden? And I was like, what? He's like, come and work with us. So I went to work there, and nobody knew the skills that I had. So I did like 9 months. I think I had like a 9-month grant to do this multimedia course. And the guy there said, oh, sure. He said, do you want a job at Auto Trader? Mm-hmm. So Auto Trader was a big catalog at the time of cars. It was a car magazine, and they were looking to get online. And he said, well, I've got a job for you. And he said, show me the rest of your portfolio. And I was like, here it is. And he was like, you'll be wasted. In my head, I was thinking, I just want money, but it's like, you'll be wasted there. You need to come to our department. So I actually went to John Moores University in my city of Liverpool, where I live. I just had like a placement, and I would go in, I would do whatever was needed in the studio. And I would, I was in early, and I never wanted to leave, but then I would learn how to record audio, film, edit, code, clean up images.
This is such a great experience.
Yeah.
This is so broadening for the horizons. I wonder, in general, how this got you to meet with Miss Eva and get to conduct these workshops, because if I understand correctly, you've been doing it for quite a long time already.
Yeah, I mean, I think it could be somewhere between 10 and 15 years. I honestly can't remember. So this is a really great story to tell. So I was in the office one day. At the time, I was quite footloose and fancy free. I would travel a lot with my skateboard, but I would work and I would teach. So I think I was recognized as somebody that liked to go overseas and just explore and do things. So I went in to speak to Yadja, who I'm sure you know, Yadja Williams. And she just sat me down. She went, listen, we're thinking about making a connection between the school and would you like to go on like a little journey that's very important to me? And I knew how much her Polish heritage meant to her. And she just said, would you go on a visit? And I was like, okay. And I was like, what do you mean? She's like, you can get 10 days worth of travel money. So let's go to Katowice, and then you're going to go to Warsaw. And I was like, okay. Yeah, so I went. yeah, many years ago. Poland felt quite different back then, of course. So I was just like, yeah, I'll go. I jumped on the plane, and I just went to Katowice, and I think I introduced our school, and then I shook hands with everybody. Anya, I'm not sure if she's still learning illustration, took care of me real well. And Anne showed me around the city, and I just like explored Katowice, and then I got on the train, I came here. So Eva introduced me to everybody. People, I was a bit like, at the time I only had a limited amount of things to do. So I was just like, whoa, I'm in the city for like 5 days. I have a book, you know, the time, looking back, it was fantastic time and experience. And you know, it was one of them chance occurrences of somebody knocking on the door, but also I felt, you know, quite privileged, really respected Jacha, where she was coming from. And I did know how much it meant to her. I didn't fully understand, you know, Poland in any way or what I was going to enter, and I was just like up for it. Maybe a little bit of naive optimism. I was just like, let's go and see. And what happened then is, obviously there's a little bit of trust going on. They said, do you want to come and run a workshop? And I can remember now, looking back, we had a visit from somebody from Katowice, but I didn't really connect with who they were. Eva came through, and she said, okay, next workshop, 5 days in Katowice, 5 days here. Really two opposite ways of thinking. And I just jumped in, and I brought, I'm going to run a coding class. I'm self-taught through coding. Mm-hmm. So I was like, what? You know, I was like, what am I doing? How can I figure this out? You know, what gaps have I got? Can we do this? Can we do this? But it was relatively new. So maybe 10, 12 years ago, you know, this idea of processing Arduino.
And here we are. And here we are so many years later, and this is still a coding workshop.
Yeah, still using probably some of them same techniques. But what I would like to say is I feel like I'm informed by that process of how we ran them early workshops, the participatory nature of what we did, having people come in from mixed levels. So to work with graphic designer, illustrator, no coding background, but you also get people come in. You know, I would have like a master's student come in.
Yep.
Could code, or lots of different levels. You know, I've run workshops over in Finland. I've got a PhD student and a first year student. First day, second day in the country, flew in from India.
This is crazy.
And you're like, whoa.
But, yeah. Being able to work with people on different levels indeed is a great skill that I feel like you possess for this.
Yeah, but it's also, I think it's important to say it's an amazing privilege to do it. And I quite often say I learned to teach here. You know, I think the challenges of just putting yourself in this new environment and trying to figure things out in a very reflexive nature of being able to change, adapt, feel what the room's going through, maybe reflect on that. So yeah.
That is great.
Yeah.
I guess this is going to be the end of the indoors part.
Okay.
I have 2 questions for you, but we're going to do them outside.
Okay.
So, we were talking about workshops and how long you've been conducting those. Mm-hmm. And could you tell a few words about this specific workshop that we're having right now?
Yeah. I've largely run the same kind of workshop over these 10, 15 years. And maybe the biggest leap has been this one because I brought a lot less equipment. I had an interest in physical computing and the relationship between objects and coding. And using Arduinos, various other equipment, sensors to try and trigger information. So I quite like this mix of physical interaction and the digital world. So it's where I bang my head.
It is really nice. I mean, it's interesting that I had an experience with you working with much more equipment, and now we're seeing this, actually, as you mentioned, huge leap where we have an NFC chip and the rest is done on our casual devices.
Yeah, but I can remember what's quite interesting is, so I think it was last year, the year before, I met somebody who was in one of the original workshops from like 10, 12 years, 10 years ago. And they were like, whoa, you're running the same workshop? And somebody, again, I think we said, they was like, actually what you've got is a toolkit to explore things. So rather than it being a technical focus to the workshop, I think it's more a socially based technical view, which is, you know, what can this do in relationship to wider society, or what questions we can ask, rather than actually is the equipment up to date, or some of the other issues. So I've always kind of rejected that. It's a workshop that I felt works here particularly well to investigate that relationship between physical making and the digital world, and that blend. And what we just tried to do in this one is keep the same mentality but lose some of the physical equipment in a way. So
I feel like it's capturing the essence quite well. And since we're walking around the campus, such a beautiful scenery, I wanted to ask what your feelings are on Warsaw, Poland, and in general this atmosphere. How are you feeling? How are you enjoying it?
Yeah, I mean, as you well know, I mean, just meeting Peter before, I feel really warmly received here. You know, but I've visited many times, always the same experience, never any trouble, always super warm. I've begun to learn a little bit more about the culture, the food, but also I think in the last couple of years, you know, is people that are, you know, passing through the city or stopping off, and they're at various stages of their life, and they've arrived in Warsaw during the course. So it's a little bit more, you know, there's a wider context to the young people that I'm working with, and I really appreciate that. And it's been many years ago, would I have been on that journey, you know, blows me away.
Has the space been changing?
Yeah, I mean, you can see it economically, you know, it's a very different Poland from when I first came, I think, at the time. Weirdly, you know, you guys have probably just joined the EU. We've just left the EU. So again, we're at that interesting phase. But yeah, just feel really warm and value that, you know, being able to come here and put my bag down and feeling like it's a home of sorts. And I was just saying, you know, family coming out to experience that.
That's really great. I agree with you. I'm not here for nearly as long as you are, but the space feels very nice, and specifically here feels quite welcoming, and
to see it grow at the same time. In them years, and to see, I know I could see the vision, and I could see you know, the building begun, but to come back and see it connected is you know.
How was it here? What was it here yet?
I don't know. I mean, this was the new building at the time.
Was there parking space here?
Yeah, this was a huge parking space, so I can appreciate the growth and the hard work that the staff have put in to get to this period of time.
It's nice just to take a moment to enjoy everything after, especially working for, well, the whole day inside with
really
tech.
tough days.
Yeah, but I mean, it's for the good result. What do you, I don't like the word expect, but what do you see coming out of the result of this workshop?
I mean, as you know, I arrived late. I finished the class. I forgot to say where I work, so I work at the School of Digital Arts out in Manchester. Might be important to say. I moved jobs fairly recently, so I've got the pleasure of starting off in a new way. Just saying hello to everybody. Hi, Olga. Nice to see you again. I'll join you shortly. Naraja. This is crazy. So yeah, actually the workshop maybe has a slightly different flavour, but it's got the same theme. So we're looking at urgencies and emergencies. I worked with a guy called Paul Jones. We went to Riga and we ran a very similar workshop, and it's just grown from there. And I think I've always worked collaboratively. I think if I've come here over time, I remember coming off work with Hillary, you know, Hillary from Dublin. I've travelled and networked through with lots of different people here at the school, and kind of got a European dimension to the work of what I do.
It's nice that we get to work on something that is, well, literally emergencies, urgencies. That's something that tackles the world around us most these days.
Yeah, but also I think at the same time I'm cautious of whether people are tired of these urgencies and emergencies, and maybe saying this is just a starting point to think about you know, how and why and what we can make work about. I find it interesting that actually it's a starting point, but also it comes back to this idea that we're really interested in a person called Pele N, and he says it's to make matters of your concern, not of my concern. So we come back to this idea of the matters of concern of young people and the issues that they're facing we want to make work about. And that might be a different perspective on design or design language outside of that usual business environment. But what issues do we care about, and how can we make interesting interactive work around that? So.
It's been a real pleasure. It's been really interesting to get to know and get to know you through this journey and your workflow, your process. So any last words you want to say? I in general, it just feels super nice to be able to have this experience with you and to get to talk to you.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I just appreciate it. Thanks for inviting me through. I look forward to part 2.
Thank you. So possibly.
Na razie. It's probably the only Polish word I know.